a Academy Award nominee, and of course you saw the HBO logo up there. So tell us all about those things.
Oh gosh, where do I begin? First of all, I'll begin thanking the Naperville Independent Film Festival for having selected my film to show here, and thank you for such a great turnout. I appreciate coming out to see independent films, because you have to start somewhere. That's great. Any questions? Yes?
How did you pick Jack? I mean, did you interview lots of inmates, or how did it come about?
Actually, I did a film about the same topic like in the mid-90s, and I did it about a film about a prison in Louisiana. And that short film we sent out to a lot of correctional facilities, and that kind of jump-started some prison hospices around the country. I always felt like I shortchanged the guys down in Louisiana because I was only down there for a couple weeks shooting this film. So in my heart, I always wanted to revisit the topic. And when I moved back to Aurora, I heard about, this is like 10 years later, I heard about this prison hospice in Iowa at the prison you just saw. And so I went there kind of cold turkey, and I said, I want to do a film here. Could I live in this prison for a year and follow one person going through your hospice program? I want my own cell. Well, they said no to that. So it's a long story to get to the answer. They ended up, turns out they were using my earlier film as a teaching tool for their prisoners. So they trusted me wholeheartedly because they were using my film and they knew I was trustworthy. So they actually gave me 24/7 access to this maximum security prison for a year. I only had to be there for 6 months, which looking back on it, I'm grateful because a year would have been totally devastating for me. But 6 months was enough. So the first 2 months I was in prison, there was no hospice patient. Nobody actually was terminally ill. Jack, I met him because he was in the infirmary. He was a long-termer there in the infirmary, and so were a few other people. And then 2 months into my stay, it started becoming clear that Jack, he had a case of double pneumonia, and he wasn't shaking it. So he basically, it was random. Jack's story kind of fell into my lap, and he was just the next hospice patient there. So I didn't go through any interviews. I didn't pick him out of a lineup or anything. It just happened to work out that way. I think his story, for me, once it started developing, I was like, oh my gosh, because I was brought up as a anti-war. My parents we all marched in, anti-war demonstrations in Chicago when I was growing up. So this was an opportunity not only for me to celebrate the prison hospice issue, but also to kind of revisit a pacifist issue that I believe in. Jack, I think maybe you guys can all agree that he came back from World War II fairly damaged, and now we look at PTSD and try to take care of it, but back then he was literally given a pack of cigarettes and told to forget what he did. And he was a Ranger, so he was like the precursor of the Green Beret, so he had a lot to forget, and clearly he couldn't, and he kind of spiraled into alcoholism and kind of eventually a life of crime, and that's what he ended up in prison. So it's a long-winded answer to your question, but I kind of cover a lot of bases. Thanks for that question. Anybody else?
Questions?
Boy, I answered all of them.
There's one.
Yes.
So you said that being there for a year would have been difficult. What did you find that you personally had to deal with at the end of this? Your own PTSD, psychic issues after being so closely involved?
Yeah, it is. It was as much as for a filmmaker to have access to a maximum security prison and allowed to go wherever, I went everywhere with my camera. The first month I didn't even have my camera out. I just got people. I wanted people to get used to me, and I was getting to know the guys in the prison. But after 6 months, even though the correctional facility was fantastic and they let me in, and just even on the best of days, it's pretty horrible to be in prison. I started getting close to these guys. They're still friends of mine. We still write. I'm friends with a lot of the correctional officers as well. But it's just that you just can't shake it. These people, a lot of them are absolutely damaged and have done really horrible things. A lot of them, you can see where they made a stupid mistake and they're paying for it for the rest of their lives. So that was like the biggest thing. When I would leave, because I could come and go, I lived right actually across the street. The correctional facility had houses set up across the street for like the doctors who were there on call for the week. And when they didn't give me my cell, which I was thankful for eventually, they let me stay in the basement of the house across the street. So I could come and go around the clock. But that was the most depressing thing. Even though I could come and go, I pretty much knew that, I mean, like Herky was in prison ever since I graduated high school. And all that, you know, when he told me he's been in there for that long, I was like, oh my God. You just realize how many lives are in there. I'm not saying they're all angels, but it's just, that's the most devastating, the loss of freedom and just the whole atmosphere over a prison like this. Yeah, yes.
How did it get to the Academy Award? Was it in a lot of independent film festivals, or how did HBO?
That is a long story, and I'll try to abbreviate it. I'm long-winded, as you can tell. I cashed out my 401k and bought a camera and made this film, so I could prepay my bills for a year and not worry about life, basically. So I could go to prison for a year. And that was in 2006. Between 2006 and 2012, I wrote proposals to many of the best film, documentary funding organizations, Sundance, you name them, and I got turned down pretty much. And I thought, oh, my proposal writing must be crap or something. So, I hired somebody to help me write my proposals, and I think her proposals were a little bit better than mine. No, they were better than mine. But mine weren't crap, to tell you the truth. It's just hard to get funding for death. And to get funding for death and dying of prisoners, it's a double whammy. So eventually, in 2012, I cut a half hour. I shot 300 hours, by the way, because I was in there for 6 months. So I cut a half hour reel. I see someone groaning about my 300 hours. Okay. I cut a 30-minute reel, and I submitted it to this film market in New York City. It's called the Independent Film Market. They take films that are half done and try to make a fit with HBO, A&E, Discovery. So they set you up on these little half-hour speed dates, basically, with somebody representative from a company. And I had a lot of dates with A&E, Discovery, all in this same week, this film market week. One of my meetings was with HBO, and the guy I met said, "Gosh, I really, really love this story. Call me back in 30 days, and I'll let you know." So, I called him back 30 days to the minute he said that, and he says, well, because he said I had to show it to the people at HBO. So I called him 30 days later, and he says, yeah, the 2 people that I had to show love it. We have to show it to Sheila Evans, who is the main lady there. Give us 10 days, call us on Halloween. And I'm like, oh my God, perfect timing for it. So anyway, so 10 days later I call him, and he says, Sheila Evans also loved it. She wants to fly you in and meet you. So it was just, they looked at the footage, they saw a great story in there, and they liked the way I filmed it and blah, blah, blah. So it was, kind of just by happenstance. And then from that point on, things just started clicking. It was going to be a feature film because I actually had like a 6-hour cut, because I was editing it myself, but the problem is I shot it myself, so I loved all these scenes that we're never going to see the editing room floor. Of course I'm going to put them in. So it was like a mini series basically. And I think it still could succeed, but maybe not. Anyway. So HBO said, well, we can probably make it a feature, which is 70 minutes to 90 minutes. And I was like, well, thank God, a lot of my good stuff will be seen. And then in the process, it looked like, it might not have to be this long. And it might have to be 40 minutes. And I go, well, what's the strategy here? They go, well, Jack's story, it can be done. It can be done in 40 minutes. There's a lot of stuff that you don't know about Jack that you won't know about Jack, and you can't tell from the film. But the essence of his story and the issues of prison hospice are in this film. And as a filmmaker who is very protective of his footage, I am absolutely happy with what came. I'm ecstatic with how they, I had another brain and a pair of eyes to look through my stuff without me being like, So that was a strategy. They said, well, let's make it a short. And if we make it a short, it stands the chance of possibly at least competing for an Academy Award. And at that point, I was like, do it. I was like, what? Are you kidding me? I mean, this is just, it all happened so quickly. And there's some festivals you have to get into to place for the Academy Awards. There's also other, like you have to get a full page ad or a story or a review in the Los Angeles Times and New York Times, stuff like that. So we were able to jump through some of those hoops, and then I turned out I was on the short list for a while. Out of 400 short documentary films, they pick 8, and then from those 8 they pick 5, and then from those 5 they pick 3. This year they picked 5. Sometimes they go between 3 and 5. So all this was just an absolute roller coaster. And then in January I found out that I was on that short list, so I was with another 5 filmmakers. And then from January to March it was like, it was kind of a dream come true, all this attention, and from a film that basically, I paid for myself, it suddenly got to where it was at. And it took my mom to the red carpet. We were actually at the Oscar. It's crazy. So no, it was just wonderful. And the people I worked with at HBO, and I'm not saying this because they're here, because they're not. You hear horror stories like, oh, once they get their talents in your stuff, they're never gonna they'll do whatever they want. Well, it was not true at all. They were absolute wonderful to work with. They listened to me. I was in the loop all the time. So I have to say that was a great experience. And then, going to the Oscars was just, I was just totally out of my body. It was crazy. The fact that we did not get the Oscar is a sad fact, but I can live with it. I think the film, I don't want to be pompous, but I think this film was the best out of the 5. The one that won is fantastic. I just don't like the way it was put together, but that's personally my, the truth is not the best film doesn't always win at the Oscars, so there's a lot of other factors. That's all I'm going to say. But yeah. So that's another long answer. Sir?
Did you have an opportunity to develop some kind of a personal relationship with Jack, and what did he think about this being a movie, or did he even realize that it was?
Oh my God, yeah, he realized it was. And I, before Jack got really ill, we were talking, I was in the infirmary 15 hours a day, so I got to know everybody really well. I was trained at the Fox Valley Hospice, Community Hospice, as a hospice volunteer before I made this film, so I could realize what I was up against and what I was going to be filming and understand the whole hospice, the whole hospice routine. And so when I was in the infirmary at the ISP, I got to know Herky and those guys who were equally trained as I was in hospice, and I got to know Jack. And Jack, we talked, for hours. And I did a lot of interviews with Jack, even though he wasn't the next hospice patient. We didn't know at that point. And Jack kind of adopted me as his son also when I was there. So it was, every time I watch this film, I still get choked up, because Jack became a very good friend of mine, and his family are friends of mine too. Through the filmmaking and over the years. So yeah, I can say that Jack was absolutely a friend of mine. It just developed because when you hang out with with somebody that long, and that's a testament to like the prisoners who are with each other for that long. People are in there for 10, 15 years. If they don't have biological family anymore because maybe they burnt bridges, they did bad things and their family doesn't want anything to do with them, they have another family, and like it or not, their other family are their fellow prisoners. And if no biological family can go in there and visit you while you're dying, or they don't want to, you can at least, as a prisoner, know that someone will be there holding your hand, and it could be your friend Herky or your friend Glove. And Jack was absolutely aware, and I told him eventually, I said, look, Jack, I think I'm going to make, I'm making this film about hospice, and at that point he was in hospice, and I was like, I was just wondering if I could focus on you. And he goes, yeah, go ahead, if it's going to help someone else. Jack was kind of a curmudgeon, but he would also, he also knew that this could be something of a legacy that he leaves behind for other people to see, and making them realize that this prison hospice is a program that should be adopted, standardized across the country in our correctional system. So yes, sir.
The caregivers we see in the film are actual inmates, and most of them, if not all, are in for murder. How do you personally account for their caregiving dedication to people who are dying?
You know what, I
Is that a
think...
personal thing for them?
Oh, it absolutely is personal. And that actually, for most of them, it's the first time they were ever given the chance to do anything with this much compassion. There's also a selfish side to this. Not that they get more money, not that they get extra food, but they have the knowledge that if this program is successful, when they die, when it's their time to pass away, that this program will still be there for them. So they have a self-policing. They monitor thing. If someone's out of line, the red flags go up and say, like, this. They don't want anything to jeopardize this program, because if something does jeopardize this program, like a lot of correctional facilities around the country, they can yank this program in a second, and they take pride in what they do. They actually, and they're friends. Like Jack is a very good friend of Herky, and to have him pass away and Herky be there, that's huge for them. So I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of these guys to give compassion and love in a in a environment that is really not that conducive to that. Yeah, you have questions, sir?
Yeah, tell us about the head nurse, and it was so powerful when she said nobody leaves with income and everything.
Yeah, Marilyn Sales was she founded the hospice, but she wouldn't have been able to start that hospice without the prisoners' buy-in. And she was a dynamo. And I think every prison needs a Marilyn Sales, because if it wasn't for her, this program would not have gotten off the ground. In fact, she started this program, and I don't necessarily condone this, she started this program under the noses of the warden. He didn't even know it until she published something in their correctional newsletter saying, "Thanks for the hospice." And then it was like too late for them to, that's just the way, that's the kind of gal she is. Oh my God, I have other footage of her, just like, some really great footage of her. She's really kind of she's definitely a character. So she started the hospice with the guys, and in a weird way, the truth is, this hospice program, when I was filming there, she was getting ready to retire, and while I was there, she left, and while she was getting ready to retire, the other guys were also transferring to other prisons, and I thought, why are you guys transferring? This is a great program. I can't believe it's gonna fall apart. They go, no, when Marilyn leaves, it'll fall apart, because it's like that founders, that they call it, there's a term about, founder's legacy or something like that. Like if a founder leaves, someone who started something leaves, that program will probably suffer. And even though maybe she gave it to somebody over, gave the baton over to someone and they had good intentions of continuing, it would fade. And the truth is, when Marilyn did leave, the whole program kind of collapsed. And now, just because I think, it's like a shadow of what it used to be. Now I think because of the attention the film's getting, they're kind of stepping up, and they're trying to bring it up to snuff again. But yeah, Marilyn is absolutely, she's a backbone when she started this. Did I answer your question? Okay, good.
One last question?
Yeah. Last question. Oh, yeah.
Does the Illinois prison system have any hospice programs?
Yes, there's one in Dixon, Illinois. There was another one there was a women's hospice in, not Dixon, it's nearby. I'm sorry? Dwight, yeah. But that, I think they dismantled, I think they closed that prison. I think they closed Dwight. I should give you just in big general thing. We have 1,800 correctional facilities roughly in this country. Only 75 have hospice programs, and of those 75, only 20 use inmates as hospice volunteers. So there's a lot of room for improvement. Thankfully, because maybe I got the Academy Award nomination, I got some funding to take the film out on the road. And I'm starting a little bit now, but come spring, I will be taking the film to 50 prisons in 100 days. and to prisons that are maybe sitting on the fence about doing hospice or don't even know about hospice. And because it really is it's not a bank buster, it's not rocket science either. It just takes a little extra work, and maybe certain rules have to be, changed a little bit, but nothing earth-shattering. So that was my whole point of making this film, was to spread the goodness of prison hospice, and especially the way they were doing it with the prisoners incorporating into it, because the goodness of that ripples out ripples out of the infirmary and into the general population of the prison. Because for the first time, prisoners are seeing their buddies die. And I know that sounds gruesome, but no, you see someone going slowly fading instead of like someone disappears, goes to some state hospital, or dies in their cell one night and you don't see what happened. So I mean, there's a lot of goodness that ripples out of the prison hospice. So it's, I think it's a no-brainer. And yeah, so there's so I have my work cut out for me, but I'm going to try to do my best out there. Well, thanks for showing up.